Hello, Father Bill Barron, pastor of Assumption Parish in Sykesville and St. Mary's Parish in Reynoldsville. We're going through the 14 Rules for Discernment of Spirits by St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits. These were written back in the 16th century. So why are we doing this? Well, during our days, each day, we have different spiritual inspirations that come into our lives. Some are positive, some are negative, and some will lead us to God and some will lead us away from God. And so we really need to be able to tell the difference between the good and the bad. And sometimes the differences are very subtle and we may not know how to distinguish them. So hence Ignatius's rules, 14 of them, for the discernment of spirits. Follow the good, deny the bad. This 12th rule does not use politically correct language, okay? But for the sake of your understanding what Ignatius is trying to communicate to you, I'm going to use the language that he originally wrote. It's his language, it's not mine. It's not the language that I probably would use from the pulpit these days, because it would, we'd lose the point because people get upset about the language that I was using. But at any rate, it's a good point that Ignatius is going to make. So follow his logic here in this 12th rule. The 12th rule, I'm just going to read the whole thing. It's somewhat lengthy. Then we'll do some commentary on it. The 12th rule. The enemy acts like a woman in being weak against vigor and strong of will, because as it is the way of the woman, when she is quarreling with some man, to lose heart, taking flight when the man shows her much courage. And on the contrary, if the man, losing heart, begins to fly, the wrath, revenge, and ferocity of the woman is very great, and so without bounds. In the same way, it is the way of the enemy to weaken and lose heart, his temptations taking flight, when the person who is exercising himself in spiritual things opposes a bold front against the temptations of the enemy, doing diametrically the opposite. And on the contrary, if the person who is exercising himself commences to have fear and lose heart in suffering the temptations, there is no beast so wild on the face of the earth as the enemy of human nature, in following out his damnable intention with so great a malice. Okay, so let's unpack all that. First of all, for those of us who struggle with something called scrupulosity, this clarification needs to be offered. Scrupulous people think that temptation should not happen, and that even temptation is a sin. And this is not true, okay? Temptation's as natural as, going to come to you as naturally as the air that you breathe around you. It's a part of life because the world has evil in it. It has people in it that have chosen evil and that are propagating evil out into the world, into the media. The world has spiritual forces that are evil, and the world, being somewhat separated from the Lord, has its own inertia and its own pull that tries to convince us that we don't have a spiritual side to us, that we're just flesh and blood, and just live for the things of the world and not for the things of the Spirit. So these are reasons why we're always going to be tempted. So please don't lose heart when you get tempted. It's going to happen, and we need to know how to deal with it properly. And this is what the 12th rule is all about. So, without losing our minds about the politically incorrect language that was used by this 16th century saint, let's take up the example and understand what he's saying. When temptation does come to you, if you are going to receive it with anxiety and fear, you are going to be pummeled by the evil one. You know, if you give in to temptation and take the bait, and you do what is being proposed to you by the evil one, he will have a field day with you. He's going to run all over you. This is what Ignatius is saying. But if you know the difference between sin and grace, and you recognize the temptation for what it is, and you oppose it, and you do not give in to it, and you stay turned towards the Lord, then the opposite happens. The devil becomes a coward, and he flees from you, and you get a break for a time from temptation. The temptations are going to come back because this battle goes on a daily basis, every day that we live, before we die. But that's what Ignatius is encouraging us to do. He's encouraging us not to give in to temptation, but to use our knowledge and the discipline of the will to choose not to sin, or to choose to do the right thing as opposed to be lazy and not do it. This is Ignatius's point. So what's that mean for you? I think it's pretty self-explanatory. When temptation comes, do you know right from wrong, first of all? Have you had the interest to learn right from wrong? And can you exercise the discipline to choose the good and not the bad? Now, another thing I would just add, and this would be the final thing to add, is we need the grace of God in order to avoid sin, because we all tend to want to sin and gravitate towards sin. So when we get tempted, we may want to pray, we may want to fast, we may want to do a good deed for another person, traditionally called almsgiving in our Catholic faith. These are things that we typically do during Lent, but we can do them all throughout the year. These things open up our soul to grace, and they allow us to be able to receive the help that we need to receive from the Lord to do the good and to avoid the evil. So, 12th rule of St. Ignatius, a little bit, pejorative against women in its terminology, but I think you kind of get the point, and it's a good point. So thanks for listening to these videos. There's all the first 11 rules that I did in videos over the past, say, 6 months. They're all available on our YouTube channel, Partnered Parishes of St. Mary's and Assumption, and also, I actually think it's called St. Mary's and Assumption Parishes on YouTube. And also you can find these videos in Facebook too. They're cataloged, I'm sure, under some older posts on our Partnered Parishes group page, okay? So may God bless you, and may you have a wonderful day or evening or whenever you're watching this. Thank you for watching.